Chris Mannix, Sports Illustrated NBA writer. He joins us now. What happened last night? Can you help me here, Chris?
Well, where do you want to start? In which team? Everybody had different objectives. Obviously.
Well, the Knicks at 5-32, and heading south in a hurry here. So they get rid of guys who can actually play. And so what's the end game? Is Kevin Durant the end game here for the Knicks? Or
Durant is a possibility. I think Marc Gasol is somebody that's high on their radar for this summer. In moving J.R. Smith, they get out from the $6.4 million he's owed next year, and now they have $33 million, give or take, in cap space for next summer when, Gasol's on the market. A guy like, not Rondo, because I think he's going to go back to Dallas, but Greg Monroe, maybe Roy Hibbert if he decides to opt out. They've got flexibility this summer, and if they don't get somebody this summer, they can make a move for next summer. But you mentioned it. This team's going nowhere with the current group. They might be able to squeeze out 3 or 4 more wins by not making this deal, but one way or the other, this team is going to finish with one of the 5 worst records in basketball at the end of the season.
Now it's organizational tanking?
Yeah, now they're taking the Philadelphia approach. And look, they might be doing this to convince Carmelo Anthony to sit down, because I've been told that Carmelo wants to play through this stuff. Sit out a couple of games, play 3 or 4 more, and just keep fighting out there. The Knicks, I think at this point, they're in favor of him sitting down, and by just gutting the roster and making it more pointless for Carmelo to keep coming back, maybe it's a way to point him in that direction towards the bench and say, let's just finish this season as bad as we possibly can.
Who's going to want to play for the Knicks?
I don't know, and it's a great question because the appeal of New York is not all-encompassing. Guys just don't wake up in the morning of free agency and say, boy, the Knicks are at the top of my list. Guys want to win, and the Knicks, over the last 2 decades really, have not shown they can win anything. So it's a legitimate problem. And look, we talk about free agency and the guys that might come to the Knicks. But the most important thing for the Knicks right now, for Phil Jackson right now, is to identify who that top 5 pick is they want to take and make sure they get someone that can play. If they get number 1, it's Jahlil Okafor. Everybody in the league knows that. He's the number 1 overall pick. If they don't, it's a little bit more of a crapshoot. And the Knicks have to make sure that whoever they get at 2 through 6 or whatever it is that they land has to be the guy that can play, because if they whiff on this draft, it is going to be a referendum on Phil Jackson, and it's going to set this team back for at least 5 years.
What are the Cavs doing?
It wasn't working with Waiters. Waiters starting lasted 3 games. He wasn't working coming off the bench. He was shooting 25.5% from three-point range. They had to do something to upset the apple cart. And people talk about J.R. Smith and, oh, my God, can he play there? Is he any better? Well, probably not, but he can't be any worse. And the fact is they do get Iman Shumpert, and Shumpert, at the very least, can defend his position. And that's something, if you look around the Cavs locker room, there's like 2 guys that can defend their position. So at least they'll have somebody that can be a stopper in the game. And they move on from Waiters, who, like I said, it just wasn't working.
Okay, but did this come down to friction off the court, too? Is this all about Dion Waiters and Kyrie Irving just not getting along?
No, I mean, that's true, but I don't think it came down to that. I think it came down to the fact that they wanted Waiters to be sort of their new Mike Miller. They wanted him to be comfortable in a position where he could shoot the 3 and space the floor. He just couldn't do it. The numbers, like I said, they speak for themselves. And with him incapable of doing that, incapable of being a volume scorer off the bench, he's averaging a career low 10.5 points. They had to do something to shake things up. They also get a first-round pick. And granted, it's a protected one that will keep it out of the lottery for the next 2-3 years. But it is something they can use as an asset down the line if they want to try to acquire somebody. Look, they were calling Denver weekly, if not more, to try to extract Timothy Mozgov from the Nuggets. The Nuggets did not want Dion Waiters. Now, with this pick, maybe with the other pick they acquired from Memphis a couple of years ago, maybe, and this is a big long shot at this point, but maybe they can put something together that might interest the Nuggets to get them a big man.
Yeah, Cleveland's got to have some help inside. We're talking to Chris Mannix from Sports Illustrated, their NBA writer. Who's more likely to be back next year, the head coach of the Cavaliers or Kevin Love?
I would say Kevin Love, just because guys don't leave money on the table. Carmelo, he's a great example. I mean, Carmelo knew the Knicks were going to be bad. He probably didn't know they were going to be basketball's Titanic this year, but he knew they were going to be bad going into this season. But he still took the money and eschewed Chicago, which could give him max dollars, but 1 year less. And I think Kevin Love could find himself in the same boat. Now, if this thing goes really south the rest of the year, maybe that changes. But it's rare, Dan, that you see guys leave that much money. Dwight Howard did it, but that was an awful situation in L.A. I'm not sure it's going to get to that point with Kevin Love in Cleveland.
Yeah, just something's happening there. It's not good. LeBron's sitting down for a couple of weeks here. And watching them play, there's no joy. There's no joy in Mudville. Watching.
No, they can't figure out how to play together. And some of this is on Vlad. I mean, Kevin Love, he doesn't want to be a spot-up shooter, and that's what they're having him do. You know, they're basically putting him on the three-point line and saying, you've got to be our floor spacer. Kevin spent a lot of years in Minnesota, you know, shooting the three, granted, but also being an interior player. And he wants to get back to some of that, and they haven't found that right balance that's making him happy. Now, maybe over the next couple of weeks, you know, he'll get to more opportunities to do that with everybody out of the lineup. But long term, they've got to figure out a way to get some chemistry because they have no chemistry on the floor on either end.
Thanks for joining us, bud.
You didn't even want to talk Oklahoma City? I mean, that was...
Well, I was going to ask you...
Part of this.
Are you yelling at me on my own show?
Well, you were yelling at Paulie earlier, so I figured I could yell back.
Okay. I don't know what Oklahoma City's doing by bringing in Deion Waiters, but are you looking at it as a positive for them?
I think it's a positive.
Okay.
They didn't give up anything. They gave up a protected pick, and this, by the way, is a strong message to Kevin Durant. That's what this is all about, saying, Kevin, we're going to go into the luxury tax. We're going to acquire talent. We're going to do everything we can to win over these next couple of years. They have to make a positive impression on Kevin Durant.
Wait. Deion Waiters is the message you're going to send to Kevin Durant?
The alternative, Dan, is not going to luxury tax territory and keep a protected first-round pick. Remember, they're not giving anything up, and getting a guy that can come off the bench and maybe score for you, that's better than nothing.
Yeah. Wait, so we just took a minute out of people's time to talk about that?
I felt it was necessary.
Good to visit with you. Thank you, Chris.
All right, Dan.
That's Chris Mannix, Sports Illustrated NBA writer.